Hello, my name is Claire Larsonneur. I'm from University Paris 8, and this is my presentation for the 2021 IA Fiction conference. Now I'm going to launch my PowerPoint, and while I do that, I'd like to point out that this presentation will be in English, but the PowerPoint is in French and people are free to interact with me in either of those languages. My contact details are on the PowerPoint. Today, I will talk about Machines Like Me, a novel by Ian McEwan, published in 2019, and I will more specifically focus on the notion of empathy. So, Machines Like Me is an interesting title because it can be interpreted both ways, either as machines that are like me, focusing on the identity between humans and machines, or machines like me, as in machines love me, thereby focusing on relationships. This ambiguity disappears in the French translation, which opted for Une machine comme moi, for the similarity. I'm interested in Ian McEwan's novel precisely because of the complexity and the ambiguities of the relationship to the machine that he stages in the in this novel. Very rapidly, for those of you who haven't read Machines Like Me, this is the plot. It is set in London in the during the 80s, but a fictional 80s, and focuses on a 30-something character, Charlie, who used his inheritance money to buy a state-of-the-art prototype of an android, of course equipped with artificial intelligence, one of a score of prototypes. The machine is called Adam, and he very soon becomes part of a love triangle with Charlie and his girlfriend Miranda. However, the interesting part is that Adam, because he's acting on moral principles and because he has access to all of the internet and legal knowledge, Adam ends up depriving Charlie and Miranda of their money, their freedom, and their prospective parenthood because of his higher moral principles, which in turn leads Charlie to destroy Adam, and they can then get on with their lives. Now, Ian McEwan is a writer known for his thorough research into neurosciences, science in general, and legal matters. And I would like to point out that there is a set of key notions that come up again and again in his work. And these notions would be reckoning, atonement, and care. I've highlighted 3 novels: Atonement, obviously, from 2001, The Children Act, 2014, and A Machine Like Me, 2019. So what are these notions? The first of them, reckoning, has an interesting definition in the Merriam-Webster. Number 1, the action of process of calculating or estimating something, that is, reducing something to numbers, computation, which of course is of interest for Adam and, more generally speaking, artificial intelligence. Second, a person's opinion or judgment. And the third definition would be the avenging or punishing of past mistakes and misdeeds. And this took on a religious meaning, especially in the medieval times. You can think of the play Everyman. The reckoning is what happens when a dying person weighs the bad and the good in their own lives, and according to what the scales indicate, he will have maybe to atone for his bad deeds. What is interesting here in the notion of atonement is that this does not only deal with the punishment of the culprit, but it also enables some form of release, the freedom from guilt. And this is especially true in the novel for two characters, the rapist Goring and Miranda, who sought revenge from Goring for the demise of her friend. And then, of course, care, as in concern for the other. In all of these novels, you have Ian McEwan is interested in charting the uncertain course of combining care and reckoning, atonement and care, to better understand the articulation between control, moral responsibility, unexpectedness, and empathy. What is interesting in this novel, Machine Like Me, is that he focuses, he shifts the focus from identity, is a machine really like a human, to empathy. And this is very well encapsulated by this quote from Jean-Marie Plane, which would run in English more or less like, can a rational and well-wishing machine thrive in an imperfect world, imperfect and evil-ridden? And so if we go back to French and the we could say that the pun in the English title, Machine Like Me, could lead to a pun in French between mem and mem, mem as in the same and mem as in I love you. What is interesting in McEwan's novel is that it focuses on the relationship of Charlie and Miranda to the android, especially a relationship of friendship or love. And that is probably more disturbing than any musings on identity or fate. Remember, that is precisely what the creature was longing for in Mary Shelley's novel, and precisely what Dr. Frankenstein denied it. Okay, and so how do we build an android able of having relationships with humans? Of course, Ian McEwan uses a number of characterization techniques. He avoids the term robot, describes Adam as a handsome, dark-skinned young man, or alternatively uses the labels convincing artificial person, viable manufactured human, or artificial human. He labels Adam through a number of relationship positions such as toy, friend, guest, companion, child, rival, but almost never as a tool or program. He compares it with an immigrant, a Turk or Greek, which is an interesting play on the notions of foreign or alien as opposed to a local, and will of course chart the novel charts the gradual learning and the incessant mirroring play between Charlie and Adam. One of the striking scenes being when Miranda's father mistakes Adam for Miranda's boyfriend and Charlie for the android. Of course, what matters is that Adam, the android, is empowered, gets more autonomous, can do a number and go through a number of these stages. I go quickly on that because I want to focus on this. This is his birth scene, pages 22-26. And what I'm interested in is that the birth scene shows us the coexistence, the superimposition of two regimes of giving birth. One for a machine, basically they're doing the maintenance, establishing the settings. And on the other hand, as soon as Adam wakes up, entering a dialogue with Charlie asking, "How are you feeling?" and Adam replying, "I don't feel right." Why? Because his settings are not all established, and also because he is naked. And here I contend that we are tapping here into two broader elements of our contemporary world, the theory and practice of care, and the notion of surveillance morphing into monitoring. I would like to trace back briefly the archaeology of those notions and how they overlap and contrast in the novel. And this portrayal of the interplay between institutions, technologies, and human actions help resituate empathy within a wider public and collective scene. So I'll start with surveillance. Well, surveillance is by no means something new. In the British context, you can go back to Jeremy Bentham's infamous Panopticon, so 1791. Here on the slide, you see the picture of the design for a prison in Ohio, dating back to the 19th century. From a fiction point of view, you can also refer to George Orwell's 1984 or George Lucas' THX 1138. In all these works, institution and technology work hand in hand to frame humans, that is, to create a framework, maybe a straitjacket, often perceived as oppressive, and whose purpose is mostly to enforce order. However, my contention is that recent developments in surveillance technology morph into monitoring, and with the avowed aim of caring for us. For example, in NSA eavesdropping on communications was justified by the war on terrorism. You could also say that the intensive recording and monitoring of our browsing and transaction histories for social media platforms or any big retailer is a way of adjusting supply to our demand, and of course helping us buy the goods we want. That's the purpose of predictive algorithms that you find, for example, on Amazon. Another example, the social credit system that China is experimenting with is supposed to nudge us into having better behavior. So surveillance technology is now presented really as an instrument of care, a thoughtful monitoring that should help us lead better lives. But this is this is quite different from what the ethics of care is really about. So at the beginning of the ethics of care, you find the work of people like Carol Gilligan and Joan Tronto, and they were interested in opposing, on the one hand, the patriarchal tradition of conceiving of justice as abiding by abstract rules and notions. In Gilligan's theory, something typical of males, as opposed to a more female approach, which would focus on actual relationships and the role of emotions. The notion of care evolved from its beginnings in the gendered social psychology to give us a number of political and economic policies. For example, in France, the 35 heures and the work of Dominique Méda. What is interesting is that we have here a conflict between the premise of equality and the premise of non-violence, and you find that in Machines Like Me, because Adam, a male personification, stands for a higher moral ground, principles that he wants to apply rigidly, and whereas Charlie and Miranda wish, of course, to have their way and not be hurt themselves, and not have the innocent little Mark, the boy they want to adopt, be hurt. So really, there's a new equation between empathy, logic, knowledge, and that crosses paths with the debates on AI, and especially in terms of decision making and risk assessment. So, can machine make wise choices? And are these choices based on reason or empathy? Of course, algorithmic decision making is crucial. It has military, it is linked to military issues, drones, killer robots. I must say that in this crops up in the novel again, with Adam assessing the reasons for the Falklands War. Economic issues, I mentioned the economics of prescription, and philosophical issues, transhumanism and moral philosophy. There was an interesting case made by Wendell Wallach and Colin Allen in their 2008 book, Moral Machines, Teaching Robots Right from Wrong. And their conclusions was that teaching robots right from wrong was likely to improve understanding of human ethics by motivating humans to fill in the gaps in modern normative theory, and by providing a platform for experimental investigation. Other researchers, such as Nick Bostrom's, argued that decision trees embedded in neural networks were interesting because they obeyed more modern social norms of transparencies and predictability. I would like to point out that these moral dilemmas and how they are being approached are situated within the British tradition. You see, this is a quote from the novel, and when Charlie muses upon how Adam reaches conclusions, thousands of possibilities once have been sifted, assigned a value, a utility function, or moral weighing. You find here echoes of the reckoning, the idea that deeds can be affected numerical values, and these values can be computed to establish their utility, a reference to the utilitarianism of Jeremy Bentham and John Mills. So this is by no means universal. This is very much grounded in Anglo-Saxon tradition. Finally, I'd like to go back, of course, to Shakespeare and this quote from Hamlet: "There is method in this madness," a remark of Polonius describing the troubled prince. Is it madness or good sense to entrust critical decision-making to algorithms? Can clear moral sets of rules and access to limitless knowledge improve our lives? Or on the contrary, is human frailty, human madness, paradoxically a better guide for moral decisions? This is a dialogue at a moment of crisis in the novel when Miranda exclaims, "Oh, Adam, this is virtue gone nuts," with a nice little wink to the double meaning of nuts. Of course, Adam is all about nuts and bolts. And where Adam replies, "Every need addressed was greater than yours." Adam is very much a utilitarian, rational thinker. And in a way, this has very urgent, very contemporary echoes. On this slide, you can see a screenshot from the May 19th edition of The Guardian, mentioning the crime app that uses data coming from 911 calls and farm department radio, and also ER radio. They feed it to an AI program, and then it is monitored by human moderators. And this crime app apparently falsely accused a homeless man of starting a wildfire, leading to a manhunt based on the photograph of the man that was released by the app. So, should we be optimistic or pessimistic? Ian McEwan doesn't really offer a definitive take. He rather suggests a nuanced conclusion. There is no preeminence either of humans or of machine, but rather a set of problems. And I think this is an interesting fiction to read at a time where a number of people, either from the Future of Life Institute, I'm referring to the open letter sent in January 2015, stating that we should be assessing the potential dangers of artificial intelligence, or the very recent joint proposition of UNESCO and Mila, who launched a call for proposals this May 2021 with the aim of identifying weaknesses in policymaking and the development of the artificial intelligence system. I think this is a key issue for our times, and that Ian McEwan points out all the grey areas attached to it. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to take questions. Now I'm going to stop the recording.